Hello, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to have today Mark from GPS Dataviz. Is it correct, Mark?
Yeah, GPS Dataviz.
All right, yeah. Could you a little bit introduce yourself to the audience today?
For sure. Hi, appreciate you having me on. I'm really excited to be here and have this conversation with you. My name is Marc Kerrest. I'm the CEO and founder of GPS Dataviz. We've been a company just over 3 years now. Elevator pitch, we help sports teams get actionable insights out of their data in under a minute, trying to keep their players healthy, keep them performing at their best, and help them win more games.
Yeah, that's really quick, like a pitch, like a startup pitch.
Yeah, well, that's the world we're in.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your story and how actually you got started, guys, and where the idea came from.
Yeah, for sure. My background's in European football, in soccer here in the States. I played in Europe for a little bit when I was growing up, moved back to the United States, played college soccer here in the United States. And then, I coached for a little bit at the end of playing in college and then worked in finance. So I traded commodity derivatives for about 15 years, natural gas options, different commodities, and really learned how to manipulate data. How to present data in a way that's understandable, how to model data in ways to kind of try to forecast future movements in markets, future volatility, stuff like that. So it was really familiar and comfortable working with data. I worked for some banks, I worked for some hedge funds. I ran a hedge fund myself for a little while, and at some point, was drawn back to the soccer world. I've always been very competitive. I've always loved
Mm-hmm.
playing soccer, so I got back into coaching. Was coaching a high school team, started taking my coaching badges with US Soccer,
Mm-hmm.
and was taking my B license with US Soccer, and met some other coaches who said, you've got a pretty good acumen for coaching. One of them was a college coach and brought me in to help him on the college side. And so was working with the college team. They had GPS and heart rate monitors that we used to record distances and heart rate reactions, internal, external loads at practice. And so, for me, it was just something that I hadn't really dealt with before. It was new for me. It gave us a lot of data, and we had a strength coach who after practice would manipulate the data and produce reports for the coaches. At the time, I was really more focused on the tactical scouting side, video analysis, stuff like that. But at some point that coach left. And so when that strength coach left, the new coach didn't really know how to manipulate the data in the same way. And so we stopped getting those reports, and so the
Mm-hmm.
head coach said to me, you're pretty well versed in data. Why don't you take a look at it? So I contacted our old strength coach, who's actually now our head of sports science at
Mm-hmm.
GPS Dataviz, and kind of asked him, what are you doing with the data? And he showed me an Excel spreadsheet. He had built some pivot tables and had a process that he did manually each day, that took him anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, depending on what that data looked like and what kind of comparisons he was building. And so he walked me through the whole thing. Again, I wasn't as well versed in the sports science of it,
Mm-hmm.
what key metrics need to be hit on certain days. And so that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
what he clued me in for. And so I ran his process a couple times. And then again, being pretty familiar in Excel from my time trading commodity derivatives, thought, okay, there's probably a way I can automate this process. So I spent a couple days and built some macros that kind of automated his manual process. And so after a couple weeks, I reached back out to him, said, hey, Kevin, can we hop on a
Mm-hmm.
call? Would love to show you what I did. And so,
Mm-hmm.
we hopped on a call just like this. I brought in a new data set. I clicked a button and it kind of just, ripped through the data and produced those reports that he had been making. And his jaw kind of dropped. He said, well, I think his exact response was, what are you, a wizard? Um, and so, I might have slightly undersold how much I had used Excel in the past. And so my question to him was, do you know other people who are doing this process? And he said, yeah, I could name you at least 50 off the top of my head. And that's kind of when I said, well, then we might have a business. And so that's kind of how the original idea came up. It was not really data that I had been looking at. But I just saw some inefficiencies in a process that a lot of people were doing around athletics. And so we kind of kickstarted from there. Again, started very basic there, ran some data for a few teams off of my spreadsheet for a couple
Mm-hmm.
months, and then ultimately formalized our solution, built out a website, and signed our first customers just over 3 years ago.
Okay, and how college?
No, so this was again, I'd been out of college for a while. I'd worked in trading for a while, and then I was coaching at a college team. That job coaching that team actually kind of ended. I was still coaching my high school team and kind of working
Mm-hmm.
on this on the side. And the second year that we kind of went forward with the platform, we grew pretty substantially in the college soccer world. So we were originally working with college soccer teams
Mm-hmm.
here in the United States. In that second year, we had pretty significant interest and kind of, grew to a significant customer base. And I think that's when I kind of made the decision, hey, it seems like we have a product that people really like and that there's a need for. If this is going to be something that's going to be successful, I'm going to have to pour all my attention to it. So I kind of stopped coaching at the time and dedicated all my time to this, to put a little money into the business and hired some people full time and kind of started moving forward.
So you were pretty damn sure that it's gonna be a huge sin at this moment.
No, I think that's quite a stretch, unfortunately. I think you never know if it's going to be a huge thing, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, at some point, even today, I would tell you, yeah, we're doing well. I don't know if it's going to be a huge thing. I hope so, and I think we're taking the right steps. To me, I just saw there was an opportunity. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
I looked at what solutions were out there currently for teams, and it seemed like there were some legacy solutions that had been out there for a while, but they were pretty expensive and pretty hard to use. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just thought we could provide a better service, and that it seemed like there was demand. So I said, all right, let's see what we can do here, and we kind of move forward. I would say at the time, it's really hard when you're starting out to make projections of where you're going to be in a few years. I guess I'm good at throwing dirt at a wall and seeing what sticks. My projections for this year were actually within 10% of what we'll end up hitting this year, two and a
Mm-hmm.
half years ago. So, and I remember when I made those projections, they were a little eye opening to me. I said, I don't know how we're going to hit those numbers. And then we hit these numbers. And so, as that happens a few times, now when I make a projection for next year, which seems pretty daunting given what we achieved this year, and I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking, man, are we going to be able to hit this? You have the feeling, hey, I've already had that feeling before, and we did hit those numbers. So it does give you a little bit of confidence that you can keep, right? But again, it takes a lot of little steps, right? Looking at the big picture doesn't get you there. It's what little steps are you taking each day to make sure you're getting closer to that goal and make sure you're on the
Mm-hmm.
right path, right? I mean, you're going to have setbacks, but what are the processes you have in place to make sure you keep tracking successfully towards your goal?
Interesting. A little, guys, a little bit of business lesson from Mark today. Yeah, Mark, like, if you could tell us a little bit more about the actual data you work with, like, let's talk about the data you've mentioned. GPS tracking data from like a herd, tracking, or what exact data do you help teams with?
Yeah, for sure. So, the name GPS Dataviz, right? So, obviously, we started with GPS tracking data, right? So, teams are
Mm-hmm.
already using third party hardware. There's a lot of different companies out there. Catapult, Stat Sports are clearly
Mm-hmm.
the big ones in the market. Connexon is another big one. There's some
Mm-hmm.
new companies now coming out like Player Data that do a great job at kind of a less expensive price point. And so we're pretty agnostic. It doesn't really matter to us what hardware teams are using. We don't have any hardware. We just provide software that'll help them analyze that data. And each of the hardware providers has a software as well. But sometimes it doesn't give them all the tools they need to really understand the data
Mm-hmm.
in a successful way and implement it to change what they're doing. So we started around GPS and heart rates devices, and that was the original
Mm-hmm.
data we integrated. As we've grown, we've started working with teams that have different types of data, and so we now integrate a lot more than just GPS. There's been talk of
Mm-hmm.
should we change the name because sometimes people think we are a GPS company.
Yeah.
We are a data aggregation company, and so whether it's GPS and heart rate while the athletes are on the court or on the field or wherever they're training, whether it's something in the gym, right, like force plate data from a few different companies. There's products like Vault that offer a lot of different gym measurement testing. Velocity-based training devices now have become a big thing where people are tracking not just the weight that they're lifting, but the speed at which they're moving that weight, right? Because force equals mass times acceleration. So, you might say, hey, I lifted this weight, but how much force are you actually producing? So now velocity-based training has become a big thing, right? It used to be tethered to the ground. Now there are camera systems. There are mobile systems that attach to the bar. So
Mm-hmm.
there's just a lot of data being collected by teams. And then the end result is they have all these data points, but it takes a long time, right, to sift through the data and see how it differed from their previous data and what they should do. And even more so, if they're collecting data from 3 or 4 different streams, right, from GPS, from heart rate, from velocity based training, from force plates, from a Nord board. those all live in different systems. So when they want
Mm-hmm.
to look at one player, they've got to look in 5 different places to see how that player is doing in each data stream. For us, we bring that all into one place, and then we automate insights out of not just one data stream, but all those data streams together to really help
Mm-hmm.
practitioners get the actionable insights out of the data quickly. And instead of spending all the time diving through the data to find it, they spend the time figuring out the protocols of how they're going to adjust their training with specific athletes based on what the data is telling them. And that's really, I think when we talk to practitioners, their initial fear is, hey, you're going to replace my job. And we say, no,
Mm-hmm.
no one can replace your job. You need to be there to train the athletes. You need to be there to implement the protocols. But
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to be there to spend 2 hours each day looking at the data because you're not a data scientist. You're a great coach because you're great at dealing with athletes. I'm good
Mm-hmm.
at what I do because I spent 15 years trading commodity derivatives. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand how to manipulate the data quickly. Let me help you with that part of your job so that you can be better at your job. And that's really what technology does, right? It takes processes that were manual and that were not optimized, and then you can optimize those processes repeatedly and make people's jobs a lot more powerful and empower them to
Mm-hmm.
do a better job. That's our slogan, empower your data. We want to help practitioners empower their data.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you're basically helping coaches, but how do you overcome this, sin probably of, coaches saying that we have, a lot of data and then we need to also pay to understand this data. Like,
For sure, that's a very good question, and that's something we come up against a lot. I think what I tell coaches at that point is, you have a lot of data, but you're already paying a lot of money and spending a lot of time to collect all this data, right?
mm-hmm,
It's you bought all the hardware, you're paying for it annually. You have people who are taking time to put the sensors on the players and take it off and upload it to the cloud.
mm-hmm,
You have people who are taking the time to jump these players and assess them. So if you're going to spend all the time and money to collect the data, but then you're not going to change what you're doing and implement any changes from what the data tells you, then you might as well just save that time and money, get rid of all the hardware and forget about it and just train your
mm-hmm,
athletes. If you're going to already take the steps to buy the hardware and to take the time to assess your athletes, you might as well spend a little bit more money to get those insights out of the data. They're going to change the way you train your athletes. They're going to
mm-hmm,
keep your athletes healthy. We do things like predictive analytics. So much data collection is around what's already happened. For
mm-hmm,
us, teams have collected so much data that we allow them to then say, hey, this is what we're going to do this week at practice. And we allow them to forecast their load. So instead of getting to a Saturday and having a big
mm-hmm,
game on Saturday and saying, man, coach, our best player, we kind of worked him too hard at practice. He might not be able to go the whole game today. No, no,
mm-hmm,
no. You need your best players to play in the games. That's how you're going to win the game. What we can do is allow you to look forward at the week and say, hey, coach, if we do this week of practice, going into our game, our best player is going to be a little tired. So we can either adjust certain drills we're doing, or in these 2 drills, this is really where his extra sprint distance is going to come from. Let's rotate him a little bit in that drill so he'll be a little bit fresher for the game. And come the game, he'll have that extra sprint distance in the tank that he can use to help us win the game. And so that's what we're trying to help, right? We're trying to help people take all the data they've already collected to make their practices better, to make their team better, to keep their athletes healthy. So, when you look at it like that, why spend the time to collect the data if you're not going to take that extra step to really
mm-hmm.
improve your process? And that's really what we're trying to provide teams.
Does it mean you continuously work with your clients head to head or hand to hand, partnering and helping them all the time? Or do you provide the software, you teach them, and then they are able to do it yourself?
I mean, I think it's a little of both, right? We're putting together a lot of tools so that they know how to do it themselves in the software, but I think we very much want to provide feedback and want to work closely with our customers. And in fact, we call them just what you said. We call them partners, right? For us, I think with a lot of hardware companies, they'll sell you their product and they have very good product, collects a lot of good data, but they'll kind of give you a pat on the back and tell you good luck. And if you need help with something, you can shoot them an email. And if you're lucky, maybe they'll get back to you in a few days. For us, we consider it our job to help make customers successful with their data. So if they have, a new hardware they don't understand, we're here to help them implement it. But even our customers who have used this hardware for a long time, right? We work very closely with them. We work with Orlando Pride in the NWSL. They just had
Mm-hmm.
an unbelievable season. They were undefeated for 20 games. They won the Shield with the best regular season record, and then they won the championship a couple weeks ago. Had the greatest season they've ever had in their program history. First championship.
Mm-hmm.
Huge season. But for us, we want the insights. Hey, we're really happy we worked with you. We're so happy you had a great season. We just met with them yesterday. What went well this season? We talked about that. What could we do better? How can we help you? What are the things you would like to see? Because ultimately for us, right, we work with so many high level teams now. Those practitioners are the smartest practitioners out there. They're doing the cutting edge stuff and they care about the data, right? That's why they work with us. So for us, if they have insights for us on how we can make the product better, that's invaluable. And that's really why we consider a partnership, right? We encourage
Mm-hmm.
teams to sign a multi-year deal with us because we are a new company and we're building new stuff all the time. So our software is getting more and more expensive. We want to offer them a multi-year deal so that they can lock in a price and they know that over 3 years or whatever time they have in that contract, we're going to give them new features that are going to make the software more valuable to them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they get in return of the partnership of having confidence in us from the start and considering us a close partner with their data. And so that's really how we look at the relationship. We work very closely with our customers and we really value their feedback.
Okay, you've mentioned your customers, partners, and that you're working with a lot of, high college teams, like in high level teams. But you also been coaching in school environment, and I'm curious if there is, a place for you to join a school markets, and is there is actually data in school soccer or football in America?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think for us, that's really where we see the value in what we're building. Obviously, working with high end college teams is great, even professional teams, right? We work right now with teams in the NFL and the NHL and the WNBA. And for us, those teams, right? They get a little bit more from us, right? They might need a
Mm-hmm.
customized solution because they're really at the top end of the market. They have a lot more integrations than other customers do. And when they need something, in all candidacy, we make it happen faster, right? If one of those
Mm-hmm.
teams needs something, that goes to the top of the queue, and that's our top priority, and we try to get it done within a couple hours. But the reality is the bottom of the pyramid is huge, right? And so for us, that's really where we see a huge opportunity. I think a lot of the hardware that we're talking about that collects data, if you think
Mm-hmm.
about 10 or 15 years ago, that hardware was prohibitively expensive where there was no access for lower leagues to
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of data. But I think as technology's improved and there's been more competition, the price of that hardware has come down, where you're now starting to see a lot of lower level teams, right? Be it high school teams, club teams. Obviously in Europe, if you look at academies, right? The academy teams up to a certain level, starting at a certain age group, they're all wearing hardware and they're all tracking their data as well. And you're starting to see that filter down. And I think as time progresses, that's just going to grow. Where I see the GPS market today is kind of where
Mm-hmm.
the camera market was 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago or 10, 15 years ago, it was just professional teams who were filming their practices, their games, right? And then a company like Huddle was formed, and then you have all these mobile camera solutions. And now you go to any club soccer game in the United States, whether it's a 10-year-old soccer game, there's a camera on the sideline filming the game. And Huddle started 10, 15 years ago and now dominates that market. I kind of think the GPS market is in a similar place, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
through optical tracking, whether it's through manual tracking. There's going to be a lot more data at all levels of sport over the next 5 and 10 years. And when you bring that data to lower levels of sport, you're going to have coaches who really are coaching multiple teams, right? They don't have the time to look at the data and sometimes don't have the expertise, right? They're not versed in what that data means. And so that's just a market for us of customers who don't even have this hardware yet, but will in the next couple years. And so we see that part of the market really growing exponentially in the next few years and being a big source of our growth, right? Right now, we are working with those top teams. They are great from a marketing and revenue standpoint, and we value the insights we get out of them, like I said. But I think for us, that bottom of the market is huge, and it's just, there are so many teams out there who are going to have access to this type of data and are going to need help analyzing it and figuring out what it means.
You have mentioned that you work with NFL, NHL teams, and I think we've missed it. But what sports do you cover?
So right now I believe we work with 10 different sports. Like I
Wow.
said, we started in European football. We started in U.S. soccer,
Mm-hmm.
because that's my background, right? I grew up playing soccer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sport that I love. So that's where I was coaching, and that's what we designed the platform off of. Within a year, it was pretty quick. I had a realization, hey, in the United States, soccer is played a lot, but it's not the biggest sport here, right? Football and
Mm-hmm.
basketball are kind of the biggest sports here. And so at some point early in the course of the company, I said, okay, this is great. I want to do soccer. We still have at least 50% of our teams are soccer teams. But I also said, hey, realistically, if we're going to be a viable company in the United States, we're going to have to work with other sports. And so American football was the first sport we went to outside of that. We now work with basketball, ice hockey, field hockey, lacrosse, rugby, tennis. I'm probably missing one or two, but we work with a lot of different sports at this point. And again, right, different sports, different positions, so we baseline them a little bit differently. Obviously, the metrics will differ, especially for the on court or field. And it can be challenging for indoor teams to measure this type of data, right? Because GPS was based around access to the sky, satellite. So for indoor
Mm-hmm.
solutions, those can be a little more complex. Sometimes limited metrics where they're working off an IMU device and they're not actually GPS trackers; they're just accelerometers. Sometimes there are some local positioning systems like Connexon that are really successful at measuring those units indoors.
Mm-hmm.
Does become a little bit more expensive. So we work with all these different sports and we tailor a little bit for what we're doing for different sports. Right, an American football team in college might have 80 athletes on their roster. Right, where
Mm-hmm.
if you're talking about a soccer team, you're talking about 20 to 25. So the reporting differs a little bit. The way we're looking at evaluating metrics by position versus for the team as a whole, some of that stuff differs as well. So there are some intricacies to each sport, but on the whole, right, we're trying to automate solutions across a lot of different technologies, and there's a lot of similarities there.
What was the hardest part of changing a sports, let's say, from football and soccer? Like, because I understand the fundamentals are the same, right? But you've
Yep.
mentioned there are small different scenes, and was it hard to change the sport?
I think the biggest difference for us is American football, right? I think the pace of American football, and really the difference in the players, right? If you look at an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, right? These guys are, 250, 275, 300 pounds. They're putting
Yeah.
forth, I mean, they could still run at huge top speeds, but their
Uh-huh.
profiles, right, and the metrics that matter to them are completely different than a cornerback or a wide receiver who are
Mm-hmm.
just, again, very strong athletes, but very fast, completely different weight categories. So their profiles are just completely different. And so when you're looking at metrics from practice, right, a wide receiver might hit 400, 500 yards above 18 miles an hour. A defensive lineman, if he's really, really quick, maybe he's hitting 25, 30 yards at that
Mm-hmm.
speed. So, it comes down to differences in reporting, right? What makes sense for each position. And in American football, we really break it down positionally for the coaches because a lot of times they have one coach who just deals with the offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
So he really wants to see what's specific to his guys. So there are some differences there. But again, when we're looking at stuff like the GPS overall and doing analysis and flagging on certain GPS metrics, or especially for any of the gym metrics, right?
Mm-hmm.
There we're flagging on asymmetry, we're flagging on standard deviation, we're flagging off Z-score. Whatever it is that practitioner wants to do, it can apply for everyone, even though their metrics are completely different because we're baselining each individual to themselves. We will also do positional comparisons to make it easier for the practitioner. But, for the most part, we can create some stuff that works for everyone, and then there's those little details we need to refine for each sport.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. We have a tight time. I want to ask you one question that might take long to answer, but try to be quick. What is your future looks like? What are your plans for the future?
Well, I think if you look at our journey, right, we're still pretty young. Like I said, it's been
Mhm.
3.5 years that we've been working with teams. I think we have a lot of steps we need to keep taking. Obviously, I think the market in the United States is huge, and we're really just scratching the surface. So, for us, it's about helping more teams in the United States finding different markets that we're just scratching the surface and getting deeper in those markets. And then again, starting to look at other territories, right? We just went over to the UK a couple months ago and started meeting with football teams there. Obviously, that's the birthplace of the sport and played at a high level. And we've seen, they've been using this data for a lot longer. So we didn't know what that market would look like for us, but we've had some good interest there. I think our product, again, was based on that sport and is pretty well designed for what those people are doing. And we have some innovative stuff. For us, AI is always all the rage, right? We've integrated an AI tool in our software that allows users to query their data with simple language, build graphics that they want to build just by typing some language, and the AI will build it for them, get answers about what the data means. So, for us, I think the future is to keep pushing the borders, both with the amount of teams we're working with, but also with the tools that we provide them, right? Whether it's through AI, whether it's through other means. And then, I think there's opportunities. Again, you talked about this data trickling down to the lower levels. I think there's opportunities to help at the lower level as well, right? If you can start to identify players based on certain profiles at a certain age, hey, you start to profile like this and help kind of in the recruiting process, help in their development process. So, I think as we keep moving forward, right, and technology gets more and more affordable and comes down to lower and lower levels of sport, I think that market is just going to keep growing. And so I think the amount of users out there who have needs for our services is just going to grow. And so we're just trying to make sure that we have a solid product and that we deliver a solid service for our customers and really help them make sense of their data and implement it in a way that moves the needle for their programs. And I think if we keep doing that, I think we'll certainly be successful, whichever route we take. But I think for us, again, as an athlete, I would say I was pretty skilled. I would have played pro if I wasn't so injured, and that's certainly not the truth. But I can tell myself that at least. So the way I see it, if I can help some other athletes, I was injured a lot in my career, and it was tough being injured. So if our software can help some athletes stay on the field, whatever level they're playing at, right, just provide a positive experience for those athletes around their sport. I think that's a huge value for people, for teams, for programs. Obviously, at the highest level, it's about winning. But at the lower levels, right, it's, hey, can we use this data to help this kid get better? Or when he's just getting run a little bit too ragged from too much practicing, can we help him manage his load and help the coach see that and recognize that so the kid doesn't get hurt and doesn't have to miss a few weeks because he was overtrained or because he was undertrained and then put in a game with demands that he wasn't ready for? And those are the answers that data can provide if you have the time to analyze it correctly. And so that's what we're trying to automate for people.
Beautiful, beautiful mission. I can relate to having a lot of injuries as an athlete, and I mean, your company is basically helping young athletes to develop, and the teams as well, making world of sport and soccer more beautiful.
For
All
sure,
right,
that's the goal. Appreciate the kind words.
Mark, I want to ask you quick questions. Some of them might be obvious for anyone listening us. What is your favorite sport?
I mean, it's got to be soccer, the beautiful game. European football, definitely my favorite.
All right, a favorite player.
I mean, Zidane was my favorite player for sure. If you're talking current players, probably Bukayo Saka.
Okay, you haven't mentioned, by the way, on the podcast that you are from France.
Correct. Yeah, my dad is French. I grew up in France when I was younger. I played for PSG Youth Academy for a couple years at a low level, but I've lived in the United States for a while since then.
Yeah, that's where Mark got this beautiful English, so you don't hear him being from France. And what is your favorite part of your job?
I think the favorite part of my job is helping teams, right? I think, and that's something that as the company grows, I'm a little less hands-on because I have to take a bigger picture. There are still those original customers who I'm used to speaking to. And so when we do year-end meetings, there are some customers that I haven't had contact with, because our organization has grown. I haven't been involved in the sales process. One of our salespeople did that. I haven't been involved in the support. One of our customer success people did that. And for me, sometimes that's a little bit sad because I would love to be involved with every team. But the reality is, right, as we grow and we have so many teams and we have bigger things at the organization that I have to tend to, that's not possible. But just knowing that I have good people in place and that we're helping teams, that's really really the favorite part, right? There's always some bumps in the road and making sure that everything's running smoothly, but helping teams. I love sports. I love being competitive. When one of our teams wins, it makes me smile. I feel like I had a small part in it.
Yeah, guys, I want to just highlight to everyone how energetic Mark is, and that's where the passionate entrepreneur, and that's where I see the business is growing when the CEOs and the founders are so passionate about what they do.
Appreciate that.
All right, guys, Mark, do you want to mention something that we haven't covered with our audience?
No, I think you asked some good questions. I think you steered the conversation in a good direction. I think if anyone has any interest in hearing more about our product, right, www.gpsdataviz.com is our website. There's a way to contact us on there. We're on social media, obviously LinkedIn. We're on X. We're on Instagram. GPS Dataviz on YouTube. So if anyone has interest in talking to us, or if for us, it's even if you haven't taken a step in the data journey and you're just contemplating, buying some hardware, we're fortunate where we're in a place where we work with a lot of companies. We integrate a lot of different solutions. And so when teams are starting their journey, we're happy to be a sounding board for them too. What GPS should I get? What makes sense for our budget? What makes sense for our team? That's kind of how we can start the relationship, even if there's no revenue in it for us. We're here to kind of help teams optimize their process however we can. So I really appreciate your taking the time to have me on today. I appreciate anyone who's listening. And if anyone has any questions, please reach out to us. Be happy to talk to them.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. It was nice to have you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.